Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The Philippines could lose up to 30 billion pesos in revenues if a zero-tariff deal with the U.S. pushes through. Exporters press government to build a strategic system to lift competitiveness and boost trade. Metro Manila mayors demand that national agencies get their nod first before implementing any infrastructure projects. And how Speaker Martin Romualdez has informed his cousin, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr, of his decision to resign. That's according to Deputy Speaker Ronaldo Puno. We have this just in. House Speaker Martin Romualdez has informed President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. of his decision to resign from his post. That's according to Deputy Speaker Ronaldo Puno. The Deputy Speaker said Romualdez will step aside and face the allegations against him in connection with the flood control anomalies. Puno adds that Romualdez may address the House in plenary later today to explain his resignation. Several names have been floated as possible successors, including Bacolod Representative Albi Benitez, Navotas Representative Toby Tiangco, Cebu Representative Duke Frasco, and Deputy Speaker Faustino Boji D. Elsewhere, global markets turned cautious overnight, with Wall Street and European bourses ending lower ahead of a key Fed decision. Wall Street slipped in choppy trade as investors await an anticipated 25 basis point rate cut from the Federal Reserve at the end of its two-day meeting. The move is expected to offset weakness in the U.S. labor market, despite stronger than expected retail sales data for August. Investors also brushed off political developments, including the Senate's confirmation of White House advisor Stephen Moran to the Fed board and an appeals court rejecting President Donald Trump's bid to remove Fed Governor Lisa Cook.
We've already seen a huge run-up in the stock market and the bond market just in the first 15 days of September here. Everybody's expecting consecutive rate cuts. September, as well as 2 more in 2025. And now we have 6 total rate cuts priced in just in the next 15 months. So we've already moved the goalpost, so to speak, on what success looks like and what the Fed's going to be doing for the next 15 months or so. Now we need, consumers and earnings, et cetera, to kind of bring us forward. We had a fairly good Atlanta GDP now come out today. I think it's at like 3.5%. We had good consumer spending this morning. So I don't think the market does a whole lot over the next 24 hours up until that Fed announcement. And people are really going to be watching dissents. And are there any dissents for 0 Fed cuts? I expect a couple of dissents for 50 basis points of cuts, but I'm really have my eyes on whether or not anyone on any of the voting members are going to argue for no Fed cuts tomorrow.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped nearly 0.3%. The S&P 500 fell about 0.1%, and the Nasdaq also dropped 0.1%. In Europe, markets closed deeper in the red. London's FTSE lost nearly 0.9%. Germany's DAX dropped almost 2%. France's CAC 40 fell 1%. Here at home, up to 30 billion pesos in government revenues are on the line as the Philippines considers U.S. demands for zero tariffs. The Philippines risks losing up to 30 billion pesos in revenues if the government adopts a zero tariff scheme on selected American goods. Customs Commissioner Ariel Nepomuceno tells the House of Representatives that the agency expects to collect 27 billion to 30 billion pesos this year from U.S. imports such as vehicles, pharmaceuticals, and soybeans. He warns that this revenue would be lost if tariffs are removed as part of ongoing trade talks with Washington. The discussions come as the U.S. presses for wider trade concessions from Manila. U.S. President Donald Trump earlier announces a 19% tariff on Philippine exports to the United States, slightly lower than the 20% initially floated in August. In exchange, the Philippines agrees in principle to exempt U.S. cars, wheat, soybeans, and medicines from domestic tariffs. State firms are on track to deliver a windfall for government coffers this year. Dividend collections from government-owned and controlled corporations could reach 157 billion pesos by the end of the year. On the sidelines of the GOCC Day 2025 in Malacanang Palace, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto says the Department of Finance expects an additional 40 billion pesos in dividends from GOCCs on top of its 117 billion peso projection. He adds that more contributions may still come in before the year end. Dividends from state-run firms remain a major source of non-tax revenues for the government to fund priority programs without imposing new taxes on the public. With global trade more volatile than ever, Philippine exporters are pressing government for a clear game plan. The Philippine Exporters Confederation is calling for a strategic system to lift exports. PhilExport President Sergio Ortiz Luis Jr. told members that no single strategy can drive export growth in today's complex trade environment. He said that the roadmap should rest on 5 pillars: product competitiveness, market intelligence, digital enablement, trade facilitation, and public-private collaboration. Ortiz Luis also urged exporters to compete on quality, not price, and warned of volatility and an erosion of predictability in global trade. Cheaper loans could be coming before the end of the year. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is weighing another policy rate cut. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto says this will depend on whether the U.S. Federal Reserve lowers borrowing costs in its meeting this week. Recto, who sits on the BSP's monetary board, notes that the central bank is studying the Fed's first possible rate reduction this year and its impact on global capital flows. Recto adds that the BSP could still implement 2 safe cuts, if of 25 basis points rather, each at its policy meetings on October 9 and December 11. The flood control scandal has now reached the banking system. Authorities have frozen 135 accounts linked to public work officials and contractors. The appellate court approved the Anti-Money Laundering Council's petition to freeze the assets. The order stems from a complaint filed by the DPWH before the Office of the Ombudsman, naming 20 personnel and 6 private contractors allegedly conspiring to pocket project funds. Among those with frozen accounts are former DPWH officials Henry Alcantara, Bryce Erickson Hernandez, and JP Mendoza. The private contractors include the Discaya couple and Wow Builders General Manager Mark Allen Arevalo.
Napakabilis po nito. September 12 lang po kami sumulat. At ngayon ay September 14 pa lang. 16 pa lang. No? 16 pa lang. September 16 pa lang ngayon. At nandito na tayo. At na-inform na po ang mga bangko ng mga taong ito na i-freeze na ang kanilang mga bank account. So, thank you very much po sa Central Bank, sa BSP at si AMLC. And hindi pa tapos ang laban. Initial steps pa lang ito, pero napakalaking bagay po nito. Dahil makakampante po ang ating mga kababayan. Nasisimulan na ho natin ang proseso na maibalik ang kanilang pera na ninakaw ng mga taong ito. So maraming salamat po.
From frozen bank accounts to the national budget, the flood control controversy is now reshaping next year's infrastructure spending. Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon formally asks House lawmakers to remove locally funded flood control projects in the proposed budget of his agency for next year. This means that the DPWH budget will go down from 881 billion pesos to nearly 625 billion pesos. That's a 29% decrease. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. previously ordered the removal of funds for local flood control projects in the 2026 National Expenditure Program. He wants the funds to be rechanneled to other projects in the agriculture sector, education, and in the health sector. The DPWH budget is set to be tackled at the House Committee on Appropriations today. Scammers are moving as fast as the national ID rollout resumes. The Philippine Statistics Authority's warning of a surge in phishing attempts targeting the public. Fraudsters posing as PSA staff have been reported using text, calls, emails, and even video calls to trick people into giving personal data or cash. They often claim to offer help on ID-related matters like card delivery or record updates. Some have even gone door-to-door, offering money in exchange for ID photos. The PSA is urging the public to report incidents only through official hotlines and centers as authorities move to track down perpetrators. The warning comes as the agency prepares to resume ID card printing and delivery this month after contract delays. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Composite lower by 0.1% and Singapore Straits Times Index up by 0.3%. Here at home, the PSE Index bounced back yesterday as investors snapped up beaten down stocks. Main gauge rose 1.5% to 61.49, though value turnover was thin at 6.5 billion pesos, showing that the rebound still lacks conviction. Immediate support is at 6,100, while heavy resistance looms at 6,300. Taking a look at the main gauge this morning, as of 10:17, the PSE Index is in the green. It's a sea of green right now in the market. Main gauge up by 0.4% to 61.73. A broader all shares index up 0.3% to 37.17. All the sub-indices are trading in the green as well. Total volume traded, it is at 392 million shares, valued at over 1 billion pesos, at 1.23 billion pesos. Market breadth is positive with 61 advancers, 45 decliners, and 51 stocks unchanged. Taking a look at the currencies market, the peso opened at 56.80 against the dollar, up from its previous close of 56.91. Now, car sales may be slowing, but the shift to electric vehicles is speeding up, with more Filipinos now switching to greener rides. Our mobility correspondent, G. Baroga, has the details.
Car sales in the Philippines crept up a bit in August, with over 305,000 units sold, just slightly higher than the 304,000 recorded around the same time last year. Based on the latest figures from the Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers of the Philippines, or CAMPI, and the Truck Manufacturers Association, or TMA, the growth came mostly from commercial vehicles, which continue to be the industry's workhorse, with over 244,000 units sold, up by 8.7%. On the flip side, passenger car sales are still hitting the brakes, dropping by 24% with just over 61,000 units sold. Meanwhile, electrified vehicles are gaining ground. They now make up 6% of total sales, and the numbers are climbing. Hybrids are still leading the way with more than 14,000 units sold so far. But battery electric vehicles, or BEVs, are catching up fast, logging over 3,000 units so far this year. Even plug-in hybrids made a mark with 576 units sold to date. The Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines earlier said EV sales could hit 35,000 units by year-end, thanks to government incentives and a growing interest in cleaner, more cost-efficient rides.
There are more people who are considering BEVs as more mas nakaka-save sa kanila, mas nakaka-help sa kanila in cost savings, and beneficial talaga ang paggamit ng BEVs.
Araga adds that the local EV industry as a whole can grow bigger in the next 3 to 5 years. In a statement, Campi President Attorney Romel Gutierrez says their group and the TMA are fully behind this shift, reaffirming their commitment to innovation and the continued growth of the automotive sector in the country. As for market dominance, Toyota of the Bilyonaryo T family remains firmly in the driver's seat, holding 48% market share. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
The Philippine economy is still growing, 5.4% in the first half, and inflation remains within target. But investors aren't buying it. The PSE index is down about 6% year to date, and the market has been stuck for over a decade. What will it take to restore confidence and bring capital back? For this discussion, we're joined by John Gatmaitan, the chairman and founder of Luna Securities. Hi, John. Thank you for being with us this
Good morning, Maiki. Thank you. And good morning to your televiewers.
Okay, so John, the PSE index has been stuck. 5.4% growth in the second half. Second half of the year. Inflation within expectations. Corporate earnings managed single-digit growth in the second quarter. The PSE index is down about 6% year to date. Why isn't the market performing better despite moderate growth and tame inflation?
Okay. The very fundamental thing is the liquidity of the country. No? We've been growing 6% in terms of money supply growth, and yet, if you look at the banks, they grow their business at 12% in terms of loans. So there's not enough cash, especially with your government deficit. No? So it takes away some degree of volatility, especially this controversy that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's been headline after
The
headline.
leakage
Yeah.
takes the, multiplier effect. It's lesser. So
Yeah.
instead of full impact of the money, you
Okay,
have less.
so we need to contend with the liquidity issue. Bourses like ours thrive on excess liquidity. Right now, we're not seeing it. Money supply growth at 6% in the first half. What does that tell you, John?
Well, that is something going on in the last 2-3 years. That's why slowly, things slows down, the economy.
Okay, on top of that, all of the external risks. What are the biggest risks to our economy and naturally to the stock market as we continue in this second half through to 2026?
The risk is, can we participate in the new paradigms? First thing, are we investing in AI? Are we looking at the new health protocols? Are we looking at ways of doing things? Are we investing? That because the next wave, can we compete?
Yeah.
Are we competitive?
Yeah, everybody, especially foreign investors, are really looking to AI. And when you look at the gains in Wall Street, it's really driven by AI and tech stocks. And one lament of foreign investors is that there aren't any real companies focused on AI in the country. Taking a look at our basket of stocks, who would be the closest to investing in AI?
The telecoms are into it to some extent. Now the banks are investing. Given my experience seeing all the companies, there's a bit disconnect in terms of appreciation and the technology.
Yeah.
So it's expensive, but of course, it's a different orientation altogether.
Okay. Looking ahead, do you expect corporate earnings to accelerate in the second half of the year, given lower inflation, cheaper gas and rice, lower policy rates, and perhaps higher capex spending from corporates? And seasonally, the second half is really a stronger period.
Selectively. Why? Because if you look at the market, it's still composed of largely on the bank and the property. And the property is in not a slowdown, or I guess it's in a phase that it
But
will
at the
take some
same time, banks and property are the very stocks that do well in a lower interest rate environment. We're in the middle of an easing cycle with the BSP. Expectations are for more rate cuts on the table.
If you look at the banks, LDRs, or their loan to deposit ratio, he's already at 90%. No? And at the same time, the reprieve from the reserve requirement from 19 now to 5 is there already. So how do you keep up lending more? You have to borrow, which will bring up costs.
So, John, the main gauge is at about 6,100 now. What's your realistic and optimistic target for the end of the year?
Okay. If I look at it, I have to understand how the other markets will rate. U.S. is at the high. We cannot say we will we will follow, but we have to look at our counterparts in Asia. Are they more attractive than us? At this time, we're almost even. And given this political, situation or this problem, perennial problem.
It's a perennial problem. Okay, John, you mentioned foreign investors. Do you think the PSE index is still relevant to global investors, given that our performance for over a decade, we've been lagging?
Okay. The way like the BSP has managed, they've done very well. And I think us being included in the JP Morgan Currency Index, that's a good sign because
The peso.
yeah, in terms of peso, being part of it, equities are not far behind.
It feels like we're far behind, though. It feels like we're very far behind, John.
Soon, hopefully, moments of brilliance will.
And the stock transaction tax that was implemented in July cut to 0.1%, which puts us at par with our ASEAN peers.
Yes.
That didn't make much of a dent. How do you see the impact on the market?
Again, it's the liquidity that we need, or maybe bring up to 9% in terms of the money supply growth. Then there'll be more money to go around, aside from loans the banks are extending together with the government borrowing.
Which is why daily average turnover has been so thin, so anemic. Apart from that, only 1% of Filipinos are really invested in the stock market.
That's correct.
What do we need to do? What do we need to do to get people more interested in stocks, more interested than stocks than gambling?
If you look at it, it's really a mindset that the Filipinos should change or have. In other countries, at a very young age, that's what people, even young, they're put into business camps. And the first thing that you see headlines, it's what the billionaires do. Here in the Philippines, of course, it's different, right? Maybe more on the, not saying, entertainment. It's more popular among many, not business.
Okay, John, corruption scandals. There's been public outrage over corruption in the country, reaching fever pitch. There are protests scheduled this weekend. How is that spilling over in investor confidence? How do you see that playing out in terms of investor confidence?
Well, from previous same events like this, it takes like 3 or sometimes 6 months for it to be fully discounted. Especially if there is more imminent resolution. And we've seen that in EDSA 1, EDSA 2, and then the pork barrel scandal before. So, and very soon we'll have rallies.
How are you advising clients to navigate in this kind of environment?
Okay, that's what we've experienced in the last 3 years, since we started operating 23, 24, and of course 25. It's all stock selection.
Okay.
If there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do.
So be very specific with the stock selection. What's looking good now? Of course, there's the price, and then there's the investment horizon you're looking at. But for someone with a maybe 10-year horizon, 5 to 10-year horizon, what's good now?
Okay. If you look at it, there's one company that has been successful in navigating whatever conditions the Philippines is in. That's ICTS, if you're looking at that range. They're still growing, and most probably soon there'll be $1 billion net income company. The one that I really like is Aboitiz Equities. They have grown their business, aside from power, to the bank, properties, infrastructure, and well, my favorite drink, Coca-Cola.
Yeah, really solid stocks. Another interesting stock. What about DigiPlus? You know, that was just included in the basket this year. Albi Benitez is a contender based on earlier reports that we shared. Is a contender for being the Speaker of the House. So does that, if he were to ascend as Speaker of the House, how would that change your view of this stock?
Okay, it's still the same because I'm not into gambling, no? And that this type of gambling, there is less economic impact. That's why, if ever, I'm okay with the casinos because they employ it. The casinos has already moved or evolved to be entertainment place, resort type, no. But the gambling here is a machine, no employment. Maybe they pay more taxes. No. I think I'll be sold most already.
Okay, all right. So what are you advising investors right now? You know, a lot of people are heavy on bonds in this environment. The U.S. is very expensive. What do people do with their money at this junction?
Okay, just keep an eye, no? Be prepared because next year, most probably, global markets will be good with the recovery of the U.S., with the investments that they have started to flow in. No?
Speaking of the U.S., tonight, this Wednesday their time, do you think the Federal Reserve is going to be cutting interest rates as expected?
Yeah, the bet is 100%.
Yeah. So how does that change the landscape here in the Philippines? There's going to be more liquidity. You know,
Then
interest
we can
rates
bring
there are going
down
to go down. We can
also
bring
our
down
rates.
ours. Okay. How does that change the playing field?
Okay, when you bring down rates, of course, with the U.S., you move parallel, and then there is no sort of spike in your foreign exchange, because if that's normally the movement. So with that, definitely all over the world will follow the U.S. and more liquidity will start coming out.
Mm-hmm. How much of a negative overhang are the corruption headlines that we've been seeing as of late? It's been headline after corruption. How much of a negative overhang is this on the market for foreign investors and for local investors, John?
Not many have been looking at this debt. When Noy Noy left in 2016, our debt was only 6.5 trillion to 7 trillion, thereabouts. But the previous administration doubled it. And now, from double, it's maybe 50% more. But it's 30% of, assuming that's what they're saying, 30% is being stolen.
Yeah.
So that's 2.1 trillion. And that's our deficit, or more than our deficit. Therefore, hindi kailangan mang-utang. The Philippines should not be borrowing money. No?
Just be plugging our leakages. Okay, John, as a market leader, what concrete steps would you like to see the government taking? They've formed an independent body to probe all of the anomalies. What would you like to see out of that body?
Well, not only from this flood control anomaly. You know, if you look back, was there accountability in what they have done during the COVID? How can you accumulate 6.5 trillion in debt? Was there accountability? That was promised when that emergency fund was put together or was passed. Right?
Yeah, well, everybody's all riled up to protest this weekend. Will you be joining one?
I'll see you there.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's another one after several rallies we've attended.
Okay. Well, yeah, we're looking to see accountability. What else would you want to see? Of course, you want to see them jailed and the money recouped. What are your thoughts? What does the market need to help, restore confidence?
Well, what do you think will be what action will be acceptable from many. Yeah? Put them to jail, hang them.
Well, we're looking for some form of accountability, probably jail and recouping assets, definitely recouping assets. All right. Thank you so much, John Gatmaitan, the chairman and co-founder of Luna Securities.
Thank you, Maiki.
We're going to be taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Metro Manila mayors are now requiring national agencies to secure their approval before rolling out infrastructure projects. Metro Manila Council President and San Juan City Mayor Francis Zamora said the group has passed a resolution to this effect. He clarifies that the resolution is not limited to flood control projects, but covers all types of infrastructure. Zamora added that the move is in support of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s directive for national agencies to seek LGU approval before implementing government-funded projects. The bigger picture, the resolution could reduce ghost projects and improve coordination with local communities, but it also raises questions about whether an extra layer of approval will slow down national infrastructure projects. On another front, luxury jets and choppers of House Speaker Martin Romualdez and Congressman Zaldi Co are now under the spotlight as the corruption probe deepens into the Marcos administration. A source says Romualdez's purchase of 2 Gulfstream jets, a pre-owned G150 worth up to $8 million, and a G5 valued at as much as $35 million or 2.6 billion pesos, has drawn attention from Malacanang. The aircraft were reportedly acquired from ultra-Bilyonaryo Lushotan, whose hangar still houses them. Meanwhile, contractor-turned-congressman Zaldi Co reportedly pulled his fleet of luxury jets and choppers out of the country amid the crackdown on personalities linked to the flood control scandal. Documents obtained by Babbler show Cos Nisibis Aviation began deregistering a Gulfstream 350 worth $36 million, a move seen as preparation to fly it abroad to avoid possible impoundment. Accountability in the flood control scandal, lawmakers now say it should reach all the way to Malacanang and that President Bongbong Marcos should not be spared. The remark coming from House Deputy Minority Leader and ACT Teachers Party List Representative Antonio Tino. On Bilyonaryo News Channel's On Point, Tino questioned why Marcos did not veto flood control funds in past budgets, but did so for 2025.
He vetoed 26 billion pesos worth of flood control projects in 2025. So, kaya palang gawin yun eh. The past 3 budgets that he passed, okay, they have the unprecedented levels of flood control funding. No? So, this is the condition that enabled all of the corruption that we're talking about.
Tino also stressed that the mass rallies on September 21 should not ignore Vice President Sara Duterte. This after the Vice President again refused to explain how she spent her confidential funds during Tuesday's House briefing on her proposed 2026 budget.
Mukhang hindi po katanggap-tanggap sa publiko, mga public officials na hindi willing magpaliwanag kung paano nila ginagastos ang budget ng taong bayan. Yun ang panawagan, di ba? For accountability, transparency, sa lahat.
Right.
You know, that includes the highest officials, the president, the leaders of both houses, down.
Momentum is building for what could be the biggest anti-corruption protests since the previous ones on EDSA. Over 200 groups have
nakita yung huling listahan. At saka ang current count po namin ng dadalo ay nasa 10 to 15,000 people ang sasama. Ang malinaw po sa grupo natin ay walang sinasanto yung grupo natin. No? So kung kung Duterte man yan, Marcos o kung sino mang past administration, ang panawagan po ay pananagutan para sa lahat ng mga anomalya tungkol sa corruption, tungkol sa infrastruktura.
In an interview on BNC's Agenda, Trillion Peso March spokesperson Kiko Aquino stressed that no politician or public figure is above accountability. He warned that this is likely to just be the first of many protests to come. He also said that while the creation of the Independent Commission on Infrastructure, or ICI, is a positive step, it still needs stronger powers and legislative oversight to be truly effective.
We're definitely in the one of many scenario po, no? So sinusubaybayan po natin yung development po sa yung ICI po, yung Independent Commission on Infrastructure, na panawagan na po ito ng civil society for some time, even before this came up with President Marcos. And while positive step na nabuo na nga siya, kailangan pa rin to ng dagdag na ngipin po, no? So hindi siya magkakaroon ng subpoena powers, contempt powers kung wala pong legislation na magbumula sa Kongreso. So ang panawagan po natin sa presidente ay gamitin niya po yung leadership niya sa ating supermajority sa lower house, at gamitin niya yung support na binigay ng Senado sa anti-corruption campaign to convince them to pass yung legislation na ito.
China's EV giant is gunning for a bigger slice of the Philippine market. BYD is stepping up its local push with the launch of its newest plug-in hybrid SUV, the Tang DMI. It's the brand's largest DMI model, yet aimed at shaking up the mid-size SUV market as demand for electrified vehicles grows. Our mobility correspondent G. Baroga tested it out ahead of its rollout.
After a lot of buzz and build-up, the plug-in hybrid version of the BYD Tang is finally here.
Sustainable EV ecosystem in this
AC Mobility of the Bilyonaryo Zabel de Ayala family says this is the biggest DMI model in the BYD lineup to date, and it has been getting a lot of attention thanks to the brand's solid sales performance in the local market.
Gaan niya nga i-drive?
Ahead of today's official launch, BNC Mobility got an early preview of the Tang and took it for a proper spin, from Manila all the way to Bataan, to see just what this hybrid SUV can do.
That's roughly around 350 kilometers of driving. So we wanted them to experience both the highway drives, the uphill, and of course the DMI technology, showcase it here in Bataan.
The drive ended at Anvaya Cove, an Ayala-owned property that turned out to be the perfect test ground, with everything from off-road trails to a dedicated EV charging hub on site. Say hello to the Tang, BYD Cars Philippines' latest DMI model that is set to shake things up in the mid-size SUV scene, where Japanese and American brands usually take the lead. And right behind me is an AC Mobility EV charging hub, one of two located here at Anvaya Cove in Bataan. With its steep climbs and winding paths, the rugged terrain brought out the best in the Tang and offered the perfect opportunity to show how hybrid tech performs in the real world.
This place was really nice with a lot of ups and downs. It was so nice to teach about how regeneration works and how to use it, because the magic to EVs and hybrids, right, is regeneration.
If you cruise at a higher speed, the regen is also higher.
The Tang DMI boasts a 1,160-kilometer range, but it's not just about how far you can go. Inside, it's a stylish 7-seater packed with smart tech, advanced safety features, and creature comforts. There are currently 34 BYD dealerships across the country, and AC Mobility says they're aiming to grow that to 77 by year-end. It also remains on target to have 700 charge points this year to support EV ownership. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
Palawan is back on the world travel map, named by Condé Nast Traveler as a top winter destination for January 2026. The feature praised its dramatic scenery, secluded luxury stays like Amanpulo and El Nido, and its reputation as a tropical Shangri-La. But despite the global acclaim, Philippine tourism is still lagging, with just under 4 million international arrivals from January to August. That's 1.56% lower than 2024 and still 28% below pre-pandemic levels in 2019. South Korea remains our top market, followed by the United States, Japan, and Australia. China, once a major source of tourists, has dropped to 5th place amid diplomatic tensions. We're taking a quick break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Donald Trump's state visit to the United Kingdom is off to a controversial start, greeted by protests and prompting arrests. Outside Windsor Castle, activists projected images of Trump and Prince Andrew alongside convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Police say 4 people were arrested over the public stunt. Despite the backlash, the U.S. and the United Kingdom are expected to seal investment deals and reaffirm their special relationship, a theme Prime Minister Keir Starmer is keen to highlight. King Charles is also set to formally welcome Trump at Windsor Castle on Wednesday.
We just had a great flight. Fantastic. We appreciate the job he's doing from Bilyonaryo. Really well. Really, and the relationship with great. And it's an outstanding. I want to thank him for welcoming us. And we had a good flight. A lot of people came with us. Tomorrow's going to be a very big day in this Ambassador. It's President Sunday and Thursday. So we go. Thank you all very much. Well, I love it. I love Sunbury. I love Aberdeen. Has a lot of things here that warm my heart. I want to tell you, it's a very special place. What I could ask that Katie. Yes. You know, one of the kids tomorrow, and he's been a friend of mine for a long time. And everybody respects them, and they love it. Thank you very much.
A damning report from the United Nations puts Israel under fire, accusing them of committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. The UN Independent Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory says Israeli authorities and security forces have carried out 4 of the 5 genocidal acts defined under the 1948 Genocide Convention. Commission Chair Navi Pillay claims senior Israeli leaders bear direct responsibility for what she calls a campaign aimed at destroying the Palestinian community. She adds Israel continues its offensive in Gaza, defying warnings from the international community and even the International Court of Justice. Elsewhere in the world, Hollywood legend Robert Redford has passed away at the age of 89. Redford, the leading man of the 60s and 70s, who later turned to filmmaking and founded the Sundance Institute, passed away, as reported by the New York Times. Best known for classics like Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, he never won an Oscar for acting, but his directorial debut, Ordinary People, swept the Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Director. His legacy lives on in the Sundance Film Festival, now a global platform that not only showcases independent films, but also draws investors, creative talent, and streaming deals that power today's entertainment economy. On another front, the Cultural Center of the Philippines is now streaming its classic performances online through the CCP channel. Viewers can access over 60 titles, including Cinemalaya films, Virgin Lab Fest plays, and Philippine Philharmonic concerts, with new additions every month. Upcoming content includes performances by Ballet Philippines and the Bayanihan Dance Company. Subscriptions start at 99 pesos a month or 599 pesos a year, which go toward site maintenance and royalty fees. The Cultural Center of the Philippines says the goal isn't profit, but to make around 300 Filipino art titles accessible to more people online. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.